Hi, everybody. This is Liz from Vote Run Lead, and I'm joining you from Duluth, Minnesota, way up north. And I'm really excited about our webinar today with Monica Youngblood. This is part of our Latinas in Leadership series, ongoing part of our webinar series in partnership with Latinas Represent and political parity, and I'm really excited to be here today. And I'll just tell you right off the bat, I'm a huge fan of New Mexico. Actually, I've spent quite a bit of time there because I have a good friend that lives there that I grew up with, and I just love New Mexico. It's just a beautiful place to visit, and I'm really excited to meet you. And Faith recommended you so highly. I can't wait to get started. I will. Oh, Selena, can you do the slide? Forward the slide. Okay, just briefly, for anybody that's on the webinar where this is your first webinar with Vote Run Lead, we're strengthening democracy by unleashing the power of women leaders through training, technology, and community. And what that means is we're building an online platform so people can have access to the information and the networks that they need to really advance your leadership, whether you're running for your county commission or you're going to run for Congress, and everything in between, and all the things that help you get ready to become an elected official. We have great partners and experts in this year-long webinar series, so be sure to join Vote Run Lead so you get the weekly emails to remind you about webinars. And then know that next week our webinar is called Answering the Tough Questions. I will say we have a couple of in-person trainings coming up that I'll tell you about after we meet Monica, and use the chat box with questions along the way. Sometimes we'll interrupt and ask Monica to answer them as we go, and sometimes we'll save them for the Q&A. So I'd like to introduce our guest presenter today, Monica Youngblood, and she is a native New Mexican, raised by a single mom in Albuquerque's South Valley as Monica Lopez. She started working at the age of 14, so did I, and was a single mom herself by the age of 19. She spent years climbing the corporate ladder until 2014 when she decided to start her own real estate business and has become a top producing realtor. You just need to Google her name and you'll see she's all over. She's serving her second term as state representative for the 68th District of the State House of Representatives in New Mexico. She is the vice chair of the House Education Committee and a member of House Appropriations and Finance Committee. She has also served on the House Labor Committee and House Voters and Elections Committee. We love that. Nationally, she's been recognized by the Republican National Committee as a rising star, by the Washington Post as 40 under 40 to watch. And she has been appointed to the board of RSLC's Future Majority Caucus, co-chaired by the governor, Susana Martinez. And she was named to GOPAC's 2013 Emerging Leaders Program. And so with that, welcome and have fun, and I'll pop in and out, but otherwise the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's a pleasure for me to be here today doing this webinar. As you mentioned, I'm a state rep from New Mexico, and I'm about 3.5 or so years out of deciding to run for office and running a campaign. So the topic of creating a support system and how to do that was really something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially women, just because because it takes us a little bit more time to decide whether or not we're going to run for office. Um, so this one was important to me because I think that we overlook our current networks and the friends and family and current supporters that we have. And so that's what I am going to be talking to you about today. So I'm excited to be here. I love that what Political Parity is doing and what Vote Run Lead is doing, because I think it's important that we get more women engaged in our political process at every level of government. First of all, Selena, if you'd like to go to the next slide. What's important to start with any decision that you make in life, it's important that you understand your, why me, and turn your why me, why am I running for office, why do I want to take this on, turn that into your story, and that will eventually become the foundation of how you build and how you see your support system. For me, here's some pictures you can see of my family. I was a single mom since me and my daughter. I'm now remarried, and that's a picture of my family down below. But I really, and I think for most of us, we feel like we are being called to public service because of our families, because of change we want to see in our communities, and because of the issues that matter the most to us. And typically it's, for the most part, it's our families. There's a picture of my two nieces down below, and they're younger than my daughter. My daughter is now all grown up. She's 18, and she's attending college at Arizona State University. So I'm so proud of her, and I'm proud of the fact that I was a statistic and single mom, and I was able to raise her in a way where she defied the odds, and she is off at college doing wonderfully. My two nieces, on the other hand, they've been dealt a different hand in life, and my sister is no longer in their lives, and they're being raised by their daddy, who is and as well as with help from my mom, who came to this country recently, within the last decade, from Mexico, and we're helping him give my nieces a better life. So I'm also a small business owner, and my husband is as well. And another reason why I decided to run was because I didn't feel like there was enough representation in Santa Fe that really understood small business and what small businesses face in our state and in our country, for that matter. So that was my why. Once I started building on that and understood what my why was and what my story was, which I kind of just summarized for you all, you should start to think of those people in your life who already support you, whether it's through your network, whether it's your family members, your church, people that the soccer moms that you see on the field every week, the PTA moms. Those people typically already support you. So it's important to tap into to understand and to kind of, I know when I first decided to run, it was like, I don't want to bother those people. They're not really politically active. I don't want them to think what if they're not the same party as I am? I felt really hesitant to reach out to people who were already fans of mine or friends of mine. And I think that once I realized that, I was able to kind of just start talking to people about what was important to me, why I was doing this, and quite often people say, how can I help? I want to be involved. I'm so excited for you. So I think that it's important that we not keep ourselves in this bubble and think only political, but we actually think about just our lives and how we live them every day and the people that we come in contact with on a daily basis that are already supporters of yours, or that are already friends of yours and can understand and hear your story and say, I want to be part of that. And that's what I was able to do. Remember, you're going to need not only support in a support system in a campaign or deciding to run for office, but you're also going to need, as many of us are moms, wives, aunties, grandparents, we we all need a personal support system, and that's important. It's important to have your family at home be supportive of what you're doing, be part of the process, and it's important that you have people that you can turn to, because if your campaigns or running for office is anything like mine was, I was in a four-way primary and a general election, so I basically campaigned for an entire 12 months. It was kind of nonstop. And, a lot of my mom duties and wife duties, I had to have friends pick up my dry cleaning. I had to have friends pick up my daughter and take her to practice. But it was great to have that kind of support system, because it allowed me to be out knocking on doors, talking to people, and telling them why I was running. So it's important that you differentiate your support system, and whether or not they fall in the political piece of it, the campaign side of it, or if they fall in the personal side of it, because you never want to feel like you are like you have to do it all. And honestly, I felt a lot of times I was up till 2 a.m. thinking that I had to do it all, and it wasn't until later on in the process where I was running myself ragged, which we often do just in our regular lives, but putting a campaign on top of that, it really is. I was wearing myself thin. I think that, Selena, if you would go to the next slide, we often don't take time to stop and think about our priorities. And, I think it's once you've made the decision that you're going to run, I think that you do, once you've identified your support system or you're working through that, stop and kind of take measure of everything going on around you, what's important. Selena, if you would go to the next slide, this was just a cute little slide I decided to put in there, because it does. Everyone is going to be telling you different things. You will realize that everyone you talk to is an expert of some sort. I like to call them our Monday morning quarterbacks, and you'll be getting advice and nuggets from so many people. What's important to understand is you're not the first person to run for office, and you're not the first woman to run for office. Try not to recreate the wheel, and stand on the shoulders of those who have been there before you. And that to me was vital. I did not, I obviously was fortunate enough while I was campaigning, to be campaigning with Heather Wilson. She was a former congresswoman, and she was also running at the same time I was. I was able to tap into her expertise. She had been in this realm for so long, and she was a mom. And she was really someone I could turn to and say, okay, what about this, or what about this, or how should I develop this? And I also had Governor Martinez, who was, she was fantastic. As a Latina, as our first Hispanic woman governor in the country, I was able to look at her and say, she did it, and I watched her do it, and it was awesome to see. There are always people who have been there before you. In the lower corner, and in the middle was my former state representative, who is actually the one that asked me to run. And quite oftentimes, we're asked to run by people who know us because they believe in what we're doing, and they think that we could make a difference. So my former state rep there in the middle, he's the one that encouraged me to run when my neighborhood was redistricted. And then my city councilor, that's my city councilor and his wife down below, he was very instrumental and supportive of me as well. And I think that when you feel like you have, that also adds to the foundation of your support system. Being around people and surrounding yourself with people who have done it before, with people that you can depend on to pick up the phone and say, I've been told 5 different ways of how to do things. What do you think? It's really great to have those kind of people around you so that you can have some clarity, because it can be consuming, very, very consuming at times.
I just want to interject with a question. Sure. I have, because this to me is like priceless advice. I mean, really, it's just so priceless, because it seems like you you're building your network, and then everybody wants to tell you what you should do.
Yes.
And sort of, I love this advice. Like, you're not the first person running, but you're the first you running. So, you know, did you really just have a couple people where when it really came down to it, you would just say, everybody's saying this, that, and the other. Help me think this through. Or did you sometimes just have to listen to your gut? Or how did that work for you?
A lot of it was, when I first announced that I was running, people came to me. For instance, Heather Wilson, I saw her at an event shortly after, and she said, "Please, here's my number. We're both running campaigns right now. Our time is going to be limited, but if you ever need anything, let me know." My state representative at the time, well, who was my former state representative, he was also very instrumental because he represented the district that I was running for.
Yeah.
So he knew a lot of the intricacies of the district, of what was important to constituents in the district. So he was a great person to talk to. And then also the city councilor that's down there below. These are people who I trusted. These are people who had recently, come into office and had campaigned recently. Because what I did realize, especially with some of the other, the caucus members that I reached out to kind of get advice from, a lot of those people have been in office for many, many years. And, depending on where you're from and what the demographics of your districts are or who you're representing, a lot of those people hadn't run campaigns in, a decade. So for me, it was important to find those people who had recently run, who understood my district or the makeup of it, and who could give me advice that was relative. So really, I sought out those people who really could give me the best advice and the more recent advice. And I would recommend that people do that, because it's great it's great to get policy advice from someone who's been, in a seat or a position for decades or for, several years, because they know the road. From a campaign standpoint, I think it's important that you get as much recent information as possible.
This is great. And then my last question, and I'll let you continue, is that was there anybody that sort of really stepped up and you were, or in your network or in your advising network that just really surprised you, like you never expected to have your new best friend be who, I don't know, because I always find that to me is really interesting. That you'll be surprised by who will step up for you. Did that happen?
Yes, and I would say that, my most cherished, support system, it really came from my husband. He runs a business, and I didn't expect him by any means to take on the level and amount of responsibility that he did while I was running for office. He really, because he's an engineer type, and he's great with spreadsheets, and he's really good at delegating and organizing. He really stepped up. And if it's not a husband or a spouse, I think it's you identify people and their strengths. That's what I would recommend. A lot of people that you have in your circle all have strengths and weaknesses, and you want to, you get together with people. I had one girlfriend who was like, "I can make food." I had another one who could get us water bottles. So whenever I had, people out knocking doors with me, she would provide all the water. She was kind of the party planner, and she was the one that could bring a group together and really plan an event type of thing. So I had several different people where really you just capitalize on what they are good at and what their strengths are. A lot of times, all you have to do is ask, and I can't stress that enough, because if you're like me, you don't want to put people out. I mean, this is your decision. this is something you've decided to do and you really feel like it should be you. Most people, and somebody one day, and I think it was one of these people that I have on the screen, said, "Have you asked?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to put anyone out. They've got families, they have responsibilities too." And finally, I was told, "Just ask." So, the worst thing they can say is no. And when I started doing that, I realized, I would talk to people about what I wanted to do. I mean, people just came and they said, "We'll do it. Let us do it for you." So I would say always ask, make the ask. Necessarily contribute their time, and those would be the people that will contribute their money or some sort of resources to help you.
We do have one more question in the chat box, and it's about losing privacy, and we do hear this a lot. So as your network expands, did you feel you were losing privacy, or how did you maintain that?
Yes, you definitely lose privacy, and that is one of those things that you are going to, in New Mexico, my home address is public information. I literally, during campaigns, had people knocking on my door. Your family, and this is just being quite honest, and I don't want anyone to ever be discouraged because of what happens, because men don't seem to be discouraged by it, so why should we? Our families are kind of up for grabs, and so to speak. So it's important that you're comfortable with that, or you find a way to get comfortable with really not having much privacy. I used to keep a Twitter that was my own and a Facebook page that was all my own, and I probably at one point had hundreds of friend requests in my Facebook, and I thought, wow, this is my personal family page that my personal page that I share with my family and my friends. Do I really want to let people in? And I still have about 175 still in there that I'm kind of hesitant to let in, but as a in public service, that's what we do, and actually people like to see that we are human beings. So it's important that you talk to your children about the lack of privacy, but it's also you can also draw a line and say, this is my private place.
We got another question here from somebody who's from Allison, who's running for the mayor of Powder Springs, Georgia. And she's running against an incumbent and wants to know, how do you start to fundraise? And I think that's the perfect, the connection to your network is very close. But what advice would you have for just getting started?
Right.
I know this is a big topic, but.
No, that's okay. And Selena, if you would want to go to the next slide. What you have to do when you start to engage in this is you've got to, share your ideas with as many people as possible. If you're running against a 12-year incumbent, obviously people are going to be hesitant, especially the typical people are going to be hesitant to give you money because they've been supporters of the incumbent, or just maybe don't want to get involved just yet. But what I did was I started going out to, I understood that the difference between, in my general election, obviously the difference between me and my general election opponent was that I was a small business owner and I understood business, and I could really speak to the fact that what I saw in Santa Fe was a lot of people making tax decisions or making decisions that affected small business that had never owned a business. So what I did was I picked up the phone and I started calling businesses that I knew had either been impaired or affected by certain policies, and just scheduled one-on-one meetings with them. And if you're running against an incumbent, I would definitely, most oftentimes, like now, I can just call people, But what I did as in my first run was I went and sat down. I scheduled 30-minute appointments with everyone that I could. I told them a little bit about my story and asked if I could, stop by and leave them with some information and maybe sit down with them for 15 or 20 minutes. So I scheduled several appointments with people that I felt would be aligned with me and honestly hear your story and why it is you're running, and that honestly compelled them to actually give me money and support me. Even people who had, not necessarily supported my party, they saw me, they heard my story, and it comes to that foundation. And a lot of times, if you have friends, again, this comes back to your network. Your network, whether it is trade associations or PTA moms, that can actually, refer you to people, put in a good word for you, and then you call them and you say, I'd like to sit down and talk to you about why I'm running. I think it speaks volumes. It shows a lot of time. If a 12-year incumbent, a lot of times they haven't spent the time doing that, and people will feel inclined to support someone who's willing to take time out of their day and come talk to them and visit them. So that would be my advice on the fundraising, because it's very, very important. Sharing your ideas with people, I cannot say how important that is, because that actually is what ties them in, and that's what gets them excited about you and about you running. And Selena, if you want to go to the next slide. Hopefully that answered your question enough. If you want any more, just let me know. In my next slide, I go to, prioritize, organize, mobilize. It sounds easy. It's an easy thought for me to think of right now, but I remember when I was in the thick of it, it was you feel like you're running like a chicken with your head cut off. I think that, it's important to put your priorities together. Understand that your support system's in place by now. And what's funny is, you don't really realize that your support system is already in place. It's already there. Organizing it and mobilizing it is important. Honestly, for us women, we like to talk when we go get our hair done, and we like to talk in the hair salons. We get our nails done, and we do the same thing. There's always as many people as possible in your community need to hear about you and need to hear about your story, and they need to know that you're. A lot of times, I would sit and talk to somebody while I was getting my nails done or a pedicure or something, and even if they didn't live in my district, I knew that they knew somebody that did. And it's important that you share as much as you can with people, because before you know it, they're on your team, and you don't even realize it. Obviously, part of your network is going to be your paid staff. Sometimes once you've started fundraising, it's important to have someone on staff that's paid that you can delegate to, that will always be available to you.
Did you have a system for, sort of focusing on the organized piece of it, people giving you their cards, people just telling you they support you. Did you have a system for collecting their information in one place?
So obviously business cards is a great way to do that. When you start knocking doors, you're going to hear from everyone is probably one of the most important things that you can do. People are real hesitant the first time they meet you to give you any personal information. I had a system that that I would go out, I would knock on doors, and I'd follow up. I had a spreadsheet with basically my walk list and a section for notes, where if I talked to them about their dog or a particular issue or something that was their kids, I would take the time to write a personal note. Your dog Chewy was so cute, or we had a great discussion on veterans issues. I can't wait. and once you start doing that and you follow up with people, they are ready to engage. And a lot of times people will say, "Can you come back?" Or I always put my personal cell phone on my palm cards, so people felt that they could call me at any time. And it's good to get those people that are in your district. You never want to you will always feel like you're asking too much of people who are in your support system, but the bigger your support system is, the less people you overwhelm. So growing your support system, I still feel like I'm growing my support system. I just went today and talked to high school seniors government class, and I had 3 people say, how can we help? What can we do? Those kids, they liked me, they liked what I had to say, and I will probably tap into those kids when it's time for me to campaign again, or when it's, if I need something. It's always great to stay in contact and kind of grow your support system. I mean, they won't be your tight. You'll have circles. I kind of look at my support system as my inner circle, my middle circle, and my outer circle. So I can really be. I cannot overuse. You never want to feel like you're overusing people for anything. You want to feel like you're kind of spreading it out and you're not asking too much of people. And obviously the systems you put in place, building your database is important. And I am the first to admit, while I collected 1 million business cards, at one point I had an entire gallon baggie full of them. It finally got to a point where I had to pay somebody to put them to do all the input. That's important. Try to be ahead of the game on that one, because those are the people that you're gonna send newsletters to or email. And I just saw a question on Nation Builder, and that's something that I looked into. During the last legislative session, and I think I'd already invested in a website, and I talked to my web developer, and I actually had him build a feature for my website that actually kind of implements quite a bit. But Nation Builder is definitely something to look into. So thank you for that. If you guys haven't heard about Nation Builder, it appears to be a great system. It includes website and voter outreach and plenty of other things. And I guess if we want to go to the next slide, Selena, this goes in, and we kind of covered some of this. Start fundraising, hire experienced political and a campaign manager. That's really important, because you need to put a plan in place early. The sooner you have a plan in place, the sooner you can start. Political people are great. They've done this before. They understand. I would obviously get references on people that you're interviewing or people in your community that have done it before, and set timelines and set goals. Setting a time. I didn't really, I always did that in my business, but I never thought in politics or running or in a campaign that I would set goals. And obviously the fundraising goals, those are the first one. And I think that, I never thought about knocking doors and having, I knew I could finish, and I knew if I did so many a day, but it was my way of measuring how I was doing and how well I was doing. There are going to be people, that you spend a lot more time at doors than others, but overall averages, you try and put together, your goals. And at the end of the day, you reach your goal. Did you knock 40 doors during the, few hours you were out? How much money have you raised this week? What are my goals for the week? I always set them in small chunks so that I felt some sort of accomplishment by the time I was done.
We've got a couple of questions here from Allison and Hillary. They're sort of related, asking about, do you have to pay a campaign manager, and how do you find a campaign manager?
Sure. Well, I think being involved in your local, either your county parties or your state party, those kind of people can help you quite a bit. And there are some people, when I first started, I just had someone who had been involved in politics helping me out. once I raised money, it was important that I actually had someone that could actually put a campaign plan for me, a plan for me. Um, so then that came to hiring someone, and I asked again. You're not the first person to run for office. You're not the first woman to run for office. Tap into those people that have been there before and who have done it before, and ask them who's a good campaign manager. What can I expect to pay a campaign manager? Actually, I just need volunteers. If I can get someone who can identify and lay out a campaign plan for me, then I can find volunteers who can handle the database. I can find volunteers who will do the walk list for me. I can find So it really depends on what the makeup of the seat that you're running for is. I mean, in New Mexico, running for a House seat, I mean, because I had I had a big primary and a general opponent in a year. I mean, it really did run me over $100,000. In some districts here in New Mexico, it could be over $200,000. So you really have to look at the makeup of the office that you're running for and determine how much if you can pay a campaign person, great. I know for a lot of our school board races, you can't really walk these districts. It's really tough. So really, it's just about raising money and going to as many community events as possible. So it's important that you seek out those people who have been there before and ask them just for 30 minutes and ask them the questions that are relative to what you're running for, and whether or not you'll need to hire a full-time campaign manager, or if you can actually piecemeal things together, which you can. It's possible. I think that there are plenty of people who work in our local state. We have our groups, particular groups. We have our student organizations at the universities. We have our different groups that are supportive of our policies that we can always tap into for help, and that's important too. It's important that you don't recreate the wheel, that you remember that somebody has been there before you and they've got a wealth of information that could help you. And it's not necessarily the person that has run before you, but there's someone in your state or local party that can put you on the right track and give you give you at least information and some direction on good campaign people and where you can find them. Let's see. I see one question. Did you encounter the question, have you held public office before? If so, how did you handle it? Yes, you get that question quite a bit when you're running for the first time because you're new to people and they've never heard of you, and they want to know what your experience level is like. So for me, the way I answered it was, no, I've never run for office before. This is the first time. The first good thing about that is I'm not a politician. I'm just like you. I talked about the issues we had in government at the time. I talked about, budgets that were being overspent. I talked about our where we ranked in education. I talked about things that were important to me, and I said, this is why I'm running for this office. This is why, we have plenty of politicians, and, I'm just a regular, I didn't say Joe, but I said, I'm just a regular person just like you that wants to see change and doesn't, I didn't really appreciate or like where we were in rankings at the time that I ran, and so I was able to take that and turn it into a positive. I talked a lot about seeing the things that I wasn't really happy with in Santa Fe, and saying, it's time. These people have been up here for decades. These people have experience, but is it helping our state? And that was the that would really turn the situation around. I talked about me being a small business owner. I talked about me being a mother and a wife and juggling career and family. I talked to people about, my faith, because a lot of times I'll ask you where you stand on certain issues. I talked to people about, being a soccer mom. I talked to them about my upbringing, because my past is really part of my story. And I think that it's important, once you start talking to people and they see your passion and they hear your passion, experience is something that goes, it just really does, they hear your experience and your passion, and they hear what you're capable of in your story. That's why I think your story is so important. We can, there's just some photos. We talked about hiring campaign people, putting a plan in place, goals and dollars, doors knocked. It's important to go out, and this is also another way to build your support system. Homeowners association meetings, networking events. This is there's a picture of me knocking doors with Heather Wilson, and then there's a picture of me doing a breakfast fundraiser. Business people, they prefer a breakfast fundraiser over, an evening deal, because they're working. So I would get, you schedule something at 7:15 in the morning, and they can hit it on their way to work. You talk about what's important to you and how you feel like you can be an advocate for whatever organization you're in front of, or whatever type of people you're in front of, and you're meeting your goals. Selena, we can go to the next slide. What we need to remember about the people that we're interacting with is, some people they understand your verbal, and then some people are really visual. So having your campaign material kind of encompass a visual perspective of yourself is very important. It helps with your story, and it helps build that network again. Some people won't really look at that stuff, and they want to hear you speak, and they want to hear how you interact with people. So be sure and recognize that, what type of group you're in front of. A lot of, the PTA moms, they want to hear about what's relative to them. They don't really care about your small business. They want to hear about what's important to them, and that's typically education, and extracurricular activities, and how you juggle and manage things, because typically they're doing the same exact thing. So try to keep that in mind, and again, it helps that you do that because you're building your network. Those people who can identify with the things that you're saying are going to be those people to say, how can I help? I have, 1 day a week, or I have a couple hours a week. How can I help? And that's how you'll start to build that network. The next slide, because this one was just another cute visual that I threw in there, and we went over this. So communicating your message, it's key. You've got to be able to win people over. You have to be able to convince. Don't be fake. A lot of people, and the campaign manager was one of these people, they would try to write speeches for me. Can we go back to that slide? They wanted to write speeches for me, and I was, I'm just not a good prepared speech person. I feel like people identify me and associate with me much better just by me talking to them. Obviously, that takes some discipline, because you have to know the issues that you're talking about, and you have to know the audience. You have to make sure that you have the data and that you're very well aware of it. And sometimes you're going to stumble. It's not the end of the world. It happens. It's taken me it took me a good 1.5 years to get really comfortable talking about myself. I was never raised to talk about myself, and I was, you're taught to be modest. You're taught to be, to prove yourself. So talking about myself was really, really difficult for me. And it was something that I had to work really, really hard to get over, because talking about me actually is what helps people kind of identify and feel comfortable with me. So, I can talk about all the policy in the world, but if I'm not relatable, or if what I'm talking about is at a level that, some people just, it's not interesting to them, then I lose them. So what I realized is knowing your audience is important. Knowing the data and what you're talking about is key. And then, not getting discouraged. There's going to be those times when you're in a group and you're not getting the reaction you thought you would get from people. And, it's about working through those things. Staying on message is very important. People, especially when I was in a four-way primary and a general, people can be mean. You all will probably see this at some point in a campaign, but there's a picture of a cute little kitty cat with big eyes, so precious, and it says, before the campaign, and then all of a sudden there's like this cougar that looks just totally, like it's ready to pounce. That's what you feel like going through a campaign. You're this innocent, cute little kitty cat going into this, and then by the end you are you're a cougar, and you have been through it, you have done it, you've built thick skin. Staying on track is important. It's easy to get, I remember knocking on doors and getting discouraged with some of the feedback that I had gotten, and there was a day I got back in the truck, and in my husband's truck, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I want to quit for today. It was a terrible day. And really having that support system to say, no, get out there, keep doing it. And by staying on track, I had 10 more houses or 10 more doors knocked that were just absolutely fantastic. So not getting discouraged is important. And just really believing in yourself that you can do it and you are, and you can handle it, it's important. I mean, knowing that while you're doing it, it being something that is important to you, it will help you get through it. Looks like we have another question. In a competitive race that I am currently in, how do you suggest I protect my ideas and vision from being stolen by other candidates? Meaning, how should I express my platform yet still protect it? That's a good question. You have to be, can't be real worried about, someone stealing your ideas. It's kind of difficult if they don't have a plan. I think always talk about your ideas. You don't have to go into detail about how you'll roll them out, but it is important that you are that you do put enough out there where people understand where you're coming from and how you differentiate between the candidates that you're running against. More than likely you will, especially if they're your ideas, and if it's things that if it's an agenda or a policy that you're particularly running on, you've got the data. And oftentimes, if somebody's going to steal something, they're going to steal it, but not necessarily have the data to back it up. Or really, when they're asked a question about it, they're not going to know how to answer it, especially if it's something that you've worked on and that you've studied. I think it's important that you, obviously, differentiating yourself, however it can be, you can do that with your ideas. You can do that with your, getting people with endorsements. People understand, if there's certain business issues. I went out and I got, the candidates. I tried to look at in the four-way primary. I looked at the different candidates and I really tried to figure out what what I had different to offer, because we were going to basically be on the same, for the most part, there wasn't going to be big differences between us in a primary. But I looked at their background and I looked at, what they had done and, their accomplishments or lack thereof. And I was able to set myself apart from them. A lot of times it was my small business background. In one case, I had someone, really stole a lot of what I was saying and doing. And he'd actually plagiarized our governor's policy issues, our policy stand onto his website. So I think people really, once that step without people really recognize that. I didn't have to tell people. I think it came across at the door. And that's really the only advice I can give you on that, because I think that really all you can do is look at those areas where you differentiate. And in a public forum with multiple candidates, if they're your ideas and if you know the data, you're going to set yourself aside from them, even if they try and pick off your ideas.
Great ideas are contagious, right?
Yes, they are.
And so, in a way, it's if you can look at it as a good thing, if people are like, oh yeah, and the more people you're getting on board with the idea, I think when people can see through some of that, and then especially if you're the person with the plan, and you're
Right.
speaking, this was your idea and it comes out naturally. You're not using somebody else's words or something. It will show, and people can see a lot. And I love how, you just keep emphasizing this honesty and that your ideas and your background and that's what people are really drawn to. Let's see, there's
And
one more question. Opening up the conversation at the door. That's a
yes,
good one.
this one was always a tough one for me, and I will say that door knocking was very intimidating for me at first. I've been involved in nonprofits and helping raise money for nonprofits, and really asking people for donations for food drives, and I've done all that kind of door knocking in the past, but knocking on the door and talking about myself was really hard. A lot of times you're knocking at a time when people they're just got home from work, or it's on a weekend when their kids have soccer games, and so you feel like you're inconveniencing them. But really, knocking on the door, introducing yourself as a candidate, what office you're running for, and then also saying, tell me, can I ask you what do you think is important to us, to our state, or how do you feel about the way that you can pinpoint certain issues, especially if if recent news in your area. A lot of times I learned to look at bumper stickers on cars, veteran stickers, NRA stickers. I mean, people like to, decorate their homes in a way that, you're able to spark up conversation. I would even walk up to a door and say, gosh, your shrubs or your flower bed, is gorgeous. And hi, my name is Monica Youngblood. I'm actually, I'm here out knocking doors today. I'm running for state representative for our district. It's probably been a while since you've seen somebody, if at all. I just really wanted to stop by and introduce myself and see if you had any questions for me, or if you wanted to chat with me for a few minutes. And, once you break the ice with someone, a lot of people answer the doors with babies, or their dogs come running out, or, if you can identify some sort of how's the weather question to break the ice, that's probably the best way to do it. It feels most comfortable. For me, it feels most comfortable. That's the tough part.
And it goes to that old expression, or I don't know, some expression where people say, people will tell you who they are. Listen.
Exactly.
Because
Listening to people is important, because somebody gave me a script that I should go to at the door, but that didn't work for me. For me, it was kind of pulling something out, identifying something that I could identify with them on.
So we have time for one more question. I think this is a really great one. Somebody is asking if you can speak to the theme, Latinas and leadership, and if this played a role in your running and relevant to you. What would you say to that?
It has been, for me, it has, my background, I never anticipated or never thought that I would be in the position that I am today, and I am so grateful to be Hispanic woman in the legislature. I think that it is vital. I live and I'm from, what we're seeing happen across the country in terms of Latino and Latinas getting into politics. It seems like it's out of the norm. Here in New Mexico, this is a minority majority state. So for me, it's not that far fetched because the majority, of our population are minorities. Obviously, it's been a little bit different for me because I'm not your typical, politician or a Hispanic politician here in New Mexico. But what I think it speaks volumes, and relating to people in our communities is so important. And I think that when we, just the face, seeing a face and knowing that you being relatable and feeling like you represent the community that you come from is important. And whether you're, it doesn't matter the color of your, really, I try not to see that, but I realize it is on the forefront of everything that we're doing. And I'm just so proud that I could actually be a voice for Latinas and leadership, because I never anticipated I'd be here. And it is remarkable how I think putting people together like this so that they can learn from one another, it is fantastic.
So we have one very, very last question, and then I'm going to thank you profusely because this has been awesome. I have a whole page of awesome advice. This last question, she says, when I'm elected, I'll be the first Hispanic mayor in all of Georgia. Any advice for being a first?
That is so awesome. I mean, it is. You're going to be a role model for many, just like Governor Martinez is in our state. While we are a minority majority state, she's our first woman Hispanic governor in the country, for that matter. You're going to be a role model, and people are going to look up to you. And it will be important to give back as well, because there are a lot of us out there that are, that have these same questions and who want to hear from those who have been there before us and those who have paved the way for us to come into office. And that's why I love doing things like this, because I feel like it's my way of giving back, because I want to see more women in office, and I want to see more Hispanic women in office. And I think that it's important we support each other, whether we're on opposite sides of the aisle or not. I think it's important that we are supportive of more women in office, more Hispanic representation across the country, because we know where the demographics are going. And I think that it's important we engage with everyone. I think to be the first Hispanic mayor of a city in Georgia, I think that's amazing, and I congratulate you for taking that on, and I will wish you the best.
That's so great. So thank you so much for doing this webinar with us. It was one of the best. It was just great. I can see why people are drawn to voting for you, because you're just really authentic and you're just really honest in sharing your advice. And I loved some of the things you said, not recreating a wheel, finding somebody who's run recently, telling your story, being yourself, and that really your ideas are what people are drawn to, and more and more. I have a whole page of stuff. So thank you so much for this.
We'll
definitely stay in touch. And absolutely. Thanks everybody for all the good questions. And this webinar will live in the Vote Run Lead library. We do have a couple of in-person trainings coming up. In May, we'll be in St. Louis on May 8th and 9th for Go Lead. And then in the fall, the weekend before Thanksgiving, we'll be in Atlanta to do Go Run. And that's going to be another fabulous opportunity. If you have any questions, contact Lou Leet, go to the website, sign up, and thank you so much, Representative Monica Youngblood. And we'll see you you later.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.